Welcome to this explainer. Okay, think about your daily routine for a second. Scrolling through social media, you're just bombarded by wellness influencers pushing miracle supplements, right? Or productivity gurus claiming a 4 a.m. ice bath is going to magically double your income. It's a lot. So how do we actually separate fact from fiction? Well, today, we're unpacking the true scientific method. We're going to build a really concrete toolkit to help you evaluate whether a bold claim is actually true or just a total coincidence. Think of this as your essential self-defense mechanism for the modern world.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. Testing everyday climbs, mastering the variables, setting the baseline, why sample size matters, the traps of bias, and finally, how experiments save lives.
Let's jump straight into part 1, testing everyday claims.
So, does listening to classical music while studying actually improve test scores? I mean, you've probably had a friend make this claim with absolute certainty. And honestly, this idea traces all the way back to this massive fad in the 1990s called the Mozart effect. People genuinely believed that just playing Beethoven to babies would turn them into instant geniuses. But to know if something like this is actually true, and not just a popular opinion, or maybe a student just happened to study extra hard that particular day and gave the music all the credit, we really need a well-designed experiment. We just can't rely on a gut feeling or an urban legend.
Which brings us to part 2, mastering the variables.
Let's meet our first major player, the independent variable. This is the one factor that the experimenter deliberately changes or manipulates. Think of it kind of like tweaking a single ingredient in a family recipe just to see if it makes the cake taste better. Now, the golden rule here is absolutely crucial. In a properly designed experiment, you must only alter one independent variable at a time. Literally just one. Because if you decide to add extra chocolate, but then you also drastically change the baking temperature, and you switch from butter to oil, well, you're never going to truly know which of those changes made the cake perfectly moist, or which one completely ruined it. You really have to meticulously isolate that one change.
Let's look at how this isolation actually plays out in action. Say we want to know if water temperature affects how fast sugar dissolves. Our independent variable here is the water temperature, so we're going to test cold, warm, and hot water. Our dependent variable is what we're explicitly measuring, which is the exact time it takes the sugar to completely disappear. But we also have our controlled variables, the exact amount of water, the amount of sugar, and the stirring speed. We absolutely have to keep these identical across the board. And honestly, in the real world, it is surprisingly easy to mess this up. Imagine just casually grabbing a bigger spoon for the hot water because it was closer, or maybe stirring the cold water a bit more aggressively. If that cold water dissolved faster, you literally wouldn't know if it was because of the temperature or simply because you stirred it way harder. Controlling these extra factors is the only way we eliminate alternative explanations. Moving right along to part 3, setting the baseline.
Okay, imagine we want to test a brand new plant fertilizer. On one side, we've got our experimental group, 10 tomato plants getting this new, highly advertised formula. On the other side, we have our control group, 10 identical tomato plants getting standard water only. Without that water-only control group acting as our baseline, we wouldn't know if the fertilizer actually caused the impressive growth or if those specific plants were just naturally going to grow 15 centimeters in 4 weeks anyway. Let's actually bring this directly to human behavior. If a friend tells you that a new daily vitamin made them run way faster, but actually scratch that, let's say they also recently started sleeping 8 solid hours a night and eating way better. How do you know what actually worked? You don't. The control group gives us those standard, unchanged conditions. It provides the essential comparison that makes our results genuinely meaningful.
Next up, part 4, why sample size matters.
So you might be wondering, why test 10 plants? Why not just test one plant with fertilizer and one plant with water? Well, testing just one plant in each group leaves us highly vulnerable to random variation. Think about the incredibly small number 3. Imagine flipping a coin just 3 times. You might easily get heads every single time. And if you just stop there, your perfectly collected data would explicitly tell you that this coin always lands on heads. This highlights what statisticians call the law of small numbers. See, we humans are totally hardwired to see profound, meaningful patterns in incredibly small, completely random sample sizes. It's actually exactly how superstitions are born. Like a baseball player wears seemingly lucky socks, happens to hit 2 home runs, and suddenly believes the socks possess magical powers, completely ignoring the countless times they've struck out wearing them before. Small sample sizes let random luck completely distort reality.
But if you flip that exact same coin 300 times, those random lucky streaks completely wash out. You're going to see its true mathematical behavior, which is landing on heads right about half the time. And this is exactly why averaging the growth of 10, 50, or even 100 plants produces vastly more reliable results than testing just one. It aggressively reduces the chance that individual differences, like, say, one single plant just naturally having better genetics, will ruin your overall findings. To put that into perspective, think about shopping online. A 5-star review on a product means almost nothing to you if there are only 2 reviews, right? I mean, one could literally be the inventor's mom. But if a product has 4.8 stars spread across 3,000 reviews, you trust it for sure. Larger sample sizes protect the entire integrity of the experiment. As we gather all this data from our beautifully large sample, we have to carefully choose how to record it. Quantitative versus qualitative. So qualitative data gives us characteristics and descriptions. And hey, this can be helpful, but it's highly subjective. Imagine an experiment where a scientist describes a chemical reaction as kinda greenish and smelling terribly like bad eggs. That's qualitative data. Quantitative data, however, is expressed as precise numbers, and it gives us a massive advantage because it allows for exact mathematical analysis and objective, super clear comparisons. Saying the plants grew an average of 4.2 centimeters more is infinitely more useful for drawing hard, undeniable conclusions than simply jotting down in your notebook that, well, the plants looked noticeably taller to me.
All right, let's dive into part 5, the traps of bias.
Because, even with great numerical data, we aren't quite safe yet. Let's look at the invisible traps that compromise reliability, often without us even realizing it. These are the 3 most common enemies of a reliable experiment. First, selection bias. This happens if your groups aren't genuinely fair from the start, like intentionally assigning the healthiest-looking tomato plants to the fertilizer group right out of the gate. Then there's observer bias, which occurs when the person measuring unconsciously favors a specific outcome. Think about a really eager researcher pulling the measuring tape just a little bit tighter for the fertilized plants because they desperately want their new invention to work. And then, oh man, confirmation bias. This is when you pay attention only to data that supports your hypothesis and just completely ignore the rest. We literally do this in real life all the time. Think about how we only ever remember the times we hit every single red light when we're running late for work, conveniently ignoring all the days we hit nothing but green lights. Because our brains naturally look for patterns we already believe, any factor that systematically favors one outcome can completely ruin all our hard work.
So how do we actively fight back against our own naturally flawed human brains? Well, scientists protect the truth using 3 crucial steps. Think of this as a required suit of scientific armor. First, by randomly assigning participants, we prevent selection bias from sneaking in. Second, blinding the observers, meaning the person measuring the plants has absolutely no idea which one's got the fertilizer and which one's got water. That completely shuts down observer bias. And third, meticulously logging every single piece of data, especially the highly unexpected results, forces us to overcome our own confirmation bias. Now, researchers do not wear this armor because they're inherently untrustworthy. They wear it because they understand that human psychology is deeply biased by design, and the scientific method is simply the best tool we have to bypass it.
And finally, part 6, how experiments save lives.
We're taking this exact same toolkit out of the classroom and directly into the hospital. When medical researchers conduct what's known as a randomized controlled trial, or RCT, they are employing the absolute gold standard of human knowledge. They use our familiar control and experimental groups to rigorously test a new drug against a placebo. So, the experimental group receives the actual new medicine being developed, the control group receives a placebo, which is a harmless, inactive substance, often just a sugar pill. This gives doctors an incredibly necessary baseline. And here's where it gets really fascinating. The human brain is so intensely powerful that a patient's mere belief that they're receiving medicine can actually trigger physiological changes, causing real physical symptom relief. This is the famous placebo effect. By having a control group taking a sugar pill, researchers can mathematically see if the new medicine actually works above and beyond the power of the patient's own expectations and natural recovery.
To truly ensure a medicine works, researchers use the ultimate safeguard, the double-blind design. This is a meticulously managed trial where neither the patients nor the doctors measuring the outcomes know which group each patient belongs to. Maintaining this level of strict secrecy is incredibly difficult and super expensive to run in a large hospital, but it is absolutely vital. Blinding minimizes the placebo effect for the patient, and it completely removes observer bias from the doctors. I mean, imagine a doctor who spent 10 years developing a new cancer drug. They might unconsciously interpret a patient's scan just a little more optimistically if they know that patient took their drug. Double blinding physically prevents that. It proves that rigorous experimental design isn't just some abstract theory for a textbook. Without this strict framework, modern medicine would be little more than dangerous guesswork. This precise structure is the critical foundation for determining if new medicines are genuinely safe and effective for the whole world.
So what does this all mean for us? Well, the next time you see a viral video promising a sudden miracle cure or an influencer shouting about some bold new life hack, ask yourself, What are the hidden variables here? Is there an actual control group being compared? And what exactly is the sample size? Now that you fully understand the mechanics behind the truth, you have the scientific toolkit to navigate a world that is just completely full of misinformation. You can critically evaluate the noise, demand the evidence, and spot the exact difference between a mere coincidence and real, verified science. Thank you so much for diving into this explainer with us. Keep questioning everything.